Leif Erikson oversees final preparations for a long sea voyage, checking supplies and talking with his brother Thorvald. The excitement and tension are clear. They're about to journey further west than any Viking before them. Freydis sharpens her sword beside the fire, her green eyes watching as Olaf secures the cargo. The crew's determination is palpable. Every Viking knows their lives depend on readiness. Leif addresses the crew, explaining the journey's risks and the possibilities of new land and riches. The men and women nod, showing both courage and apprehension. The longship is pushed into the icy water. Everyone climbs aboard, gripping weapons and personal belongings. The sail fills, and the adventure begins in earnest. The crew rows hard through rough, gray seas. Salt spray soaks clothing. Leif stands at the prow, scanning the horizon for land or danger. Dolphins leap beside the ship, signaling good luck. A fierce storm erupts and thunder cracks. Freydis helps lash barrels to the hull as Olaf bails water. The ship rocks violently, but holds together. After days of wind and rain, a thick fog envelopes the ship. The crew is exhausted but alert. Thorvald navigates by sunstone and memory, hoping to keep the course true. At first light, the fog lifts to reveal floating icebergs. Leif orders the crew to row carefully through the dangerous maze, eyes sharp for any sign of land. They spot whales alongside the ship, a good omen in Viking belief. Spirits rise as the creatures swim playfully, guiding the vessel onward. After weeks, the crew spies a strange coastline, green woods, gentle hills, and river outlets. Leif announces they've reached new land. Cheers erupt, tension turns to joy. Leif leads a landing party ashore. Norse boots sink into soft sod as the explorers take their first steps on unknown soil, scanning for threats and resources. They set up a temporary camp in a clearing. Freydis organizes the defenses, while Olaf starts building a fire for warmth and cooking. Leif and Thorvald explore the edge of the dense forest. They marvel at the variety of new plants and the abundance of wild grapes growing thick along the ground. Freydis patrols the nearby riverbank, searching for signs of local inhabitants and good fishing spots. She spots fresh animal tracks and the splash of fish in the shallow water. Olaf discovers wild honey in a hollow tree and proudly brings some back to camp. The crew savors the sweet taste, a small victory after many hardships. Night falls. The Vikings take turns on watch, ever cautious of the new land's unknown dangers. Leif sits by the fire, deep in thought about the journey's meaning. Leif records details about the land, describing the grapes, forests, and rivers in a leather-bound journal. He calls the place Vinland for its abundance of wild vines. Thorvald and Olaf build additional shelters as the rain begins to fall. They use the region's timber, impressed by how easy it is to work and how plentiful it is. Freydis organizes food stores, drying meat and berries for later use. She keeps spirits high with bold stories of past battles and seafaring adventures. Leif sends scouts to map further inland. Thorny undergrowth and rocky ridges slow their progress, but they note clearings suitable for future farming. The weather grows colder. The Vikings gather driftwood and fallen timber for a large communal haul, crucial as protection against the coming winter. Thorvald finds evidence of past visitors, fire pits and stone tools beside the riverbank. The crew speculates whether the locals will be hostile or friendly. The first frost hits. The Vikings skin fresh game and tan the hides for warmth. Freydis leads the effort, proving herself skilled in both the hunt and the craft. Leif ponders relations with possible native peoples, issuing strict warnings to avoid unnecessary conflict and to respect their land. The Vikings celebrate finding wild grain, which they grind and bake into rough bread. The food boosts morale as the camp prepares for winter. A sudden illness sweeps through the camp. Leif stays up tending to the sick, desperate to keep hope and order. The sick recover, thanks to Freydis and her knowledge of herbs. The Vikings sacrifice to the old gods in gratitude, burning offerings in a sacred circle. Olaf and other hunters return with a huge elk. The feast that follows lifts everyone's spirits and strengthens bonds among the crew. Leif sits quietly under the stars, remembering stories of Greenland and Iceland, and wondering if Vinland could ever become such a home. Thorvald scouts a distant ridgeline, searching for signs of life and better vantage points. He finds a massive fallen tree and a panoramic view of the coast. The crew constructs storehouses for nuts and berries, mindful that the winter will be long. Freydis marks each storehouse with carved runes for luck. A bear threatens the camp, drawn by the smell of stored meat. Olaf and Freydis drive it off with shouts and flaming torches. Leif orders heightened night watches after the bear attack. The crew builds perimeter traps and sharpens stakes around the camp. Thorvald discovers a distant, shallow bay, perfect for landing more ships. Excitement grows about potential future settlers, or returning home for reinforcements. Freydis finds rare herbs in the forest, crucial for medicine and trade. She returns to camp weighed down with fragrant plants and roots. Leif and Olaf present gifts of grain and furs to the gods, seeking further blessings. The mood is solemn, yet hopeful as winter draws near. Awakening to a crisp Vinland morning, Leif organizes scouting parties to map the river valley beyond their camp, emphasizing teamwork and vigilance amid unknowns. Thorvald leads a small group west, following animal tracks and gathering plant samples, marveling at the fertile, untamed wilderness of Vinland. Freydis inspects the palisade and organizes a rotation of night watches, making sure every member learns defensive maneuvers amid lingering unease in the camp. Leif explores a rocky shoreline with Olaf, noting tide patterns, useful driftwood, and shellfish beds that could sustain their settlement. As evening falls, Thorvald sketches a rough map of the region by firelight, discussing new routes and discoveries with Leif and Freydis. At dawn, Leif selects a team to survey the nearby forest, determined to map more of Vinland's resources and wildlife, and urges vigilance as the mist rises in the trees. Freydis commands the camp's defenses, instructing new watches and practicing shield wall drills, reminding all of the need for readiness far from home. Thorvald journeys along the riverbank, carefully sketching new topographical features and noting abundant wild grapevines and animal prints for later mapping. Olaf returns to camp with news of a distant waterfall's roar. Leif orders a small group to investigate the water source the next morning. As night falls, Leif, Thorvald, and Freydis gather in the longhouse to strategize settlements and routes, marking possible village sites on a crude hide map lit by a flickering lantern.